4A of Chapter 10 of the General Bylaws of the Town of Milton. The applicants are the owner of lots 1 and 2, containing 11.186 acres of land, more or less, known and numbered as 334 Adams Street, Milton, which premises are located in a residential A district. The premises are shown on a site plan dated August 19, 2014, prepared by the Neponset Valley Survey Associates Incorporated of Quincy, Mass. On file with the board. A plan by Stephen DeRoche, PLS, dated August 19, 2014, shows that the premises have no frontage along a street as defined in Section 1A7 of the zoning bylaw. The minimum frontage in a Residence A zoning district is 150 feet. Therefore, the premises are considered pre-existing, non-conforming pursuant to Section 4A of the bylaw. The applicants propose to demolish the existing single-family residence and replace the same with a new single-family residence on Lot 3. Section 4A of the zoning bylaw requires that the voluntary replacement of a pre-existing non-conforming structure occurs only if said replacement conforms to the current zoning requirements or obtains authorization in the form of a special permit from the Board of Appeals. All is therein set forth in said application and plans on file with the board and open to public inspection. Further, we have an application to the Board of Appeals for the special permit. We have a denial letter for the building permit from Mr. Prondak, our building commissioner, to the Pathex. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes.
Pathex. We have a plot plan dated
November 19th, August 19th.
August 19th, 2014, of the current site with the current buildings on it, as well as a plot plan of the proposed residence. As well, we have architectural drawings which show floor plans of the proposed residence. We have A1 through A4 and S1 through S4, I believe, 4, showing plans of what the house is proposed to look like on all sides. I am Virginia King. I'm chairing this hearing tonight, and with me to my right is board member Emmanuel Alves, and to my left is Francis O'Brien. And I understand that Mr. Cochran is here representing the applicants tonight, and I'll turn it over to you right now.
Thank you, members of the board, Madam Chairman. Ned Corcoran here on behalf of Raj and Lori Pathak, and I'm also joined by Redmond Fitzgerald, who is the builder for the proposed dwelling. I have two other pieces of information or materials that I would give to the board to help the board understand in greater detail what's being proposed.
Thank you.
And there are two items. One is two, no, one of those photos back.
I've got an extra.
Two aerial photos taken from two different sides. One showing Adams Street along the bottom, and the other showing Adams Street along the top, along the left-hand side. And it basically intended to show how this portion of Milton Hill on Adams Street lays out. And the one where Adams Street is along the bottom, the house is proposed to be raised and placed is sort of in the middle of the picture, right towards the top.
Mm-hmm.
Right as you follow that line, and that is the existing driveway, and then the other shows it from another angle. The other is an old 1980 division plan that actually created the nonconformity that is in play today. This is part of the old Forbes estate that was divided over time. In 1980, as part of a conveyance, portions of the Forbes estate were divided into a series of lots. I've colored the 2 lots in yellow, which are the 2 lots that the Pethax have purchased. The lot closer to Adams Street is now owned by Michael George, and that lot enjoys frontage on Adams Street. There is access on a private way that comes in from Adams Street, and it serves several properties within this whole division, and serves obviously the 2 properties. The dwelling to be raised is on the longer, narrower of the 2 lots. It's shown sort of towards the left-hand side of that property. The property was, as I said, this division was created in 1980. And once it was created, the lot, as it existed, lost frontage on a public way. There is no frontage today on a public way. And so
Yeah, just, these are the same?
they're the same.
Same plans, okay.
Same plan. I just colored the
Thank you.
plan to make it, as I was looking at it this afternoon, it was difficult to make things out. And so it's really a fairly straightforward application. There's an old dwelling on the property. It is not in very good condition. Pethax purchased the property about a year ago. They've designed a new dwelling in accordance with the plans that are presented, and they simply want permission they want to tear down the existing dwelling rather than rehab it and build a new dwelling as designed. And as the bylaw, as the chairman has indicated, and the bylaw reads, because the lot, although it is 2 lots in combination of over 11 acres in the Residence A zone, it doesn't have frontage on a public way. It requires a special permit from this board in order to be able to develop it. The building otherwise will comply with all other requirements of zoning in terms of height, setback, lot coverage, and the like. It's simply the fact that this is now a non-conforming lot without frontage. I would ask the board's indulgence to grant a special permit in this case. And I'll open it up for questions that the board and others may have.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, I've got a couple. Mr. Clark, how far away are the neighbors' existing dwellings? This looks like a fairly significant piece of property.
It is a significant piece of property. And if you look at the aerial photo with the property, the house at the top, Michael George and Cynthia George live in the one that's sort of diagonally off to the left. That is itself a 5-acre lot. I actually represent the Georges and represent them before the board regarding an application for a fill permit to do work on their property. I'm also before the Conservation Commission this evening on work for the Georges. There is a large property with swimming pool that is served by the same private drive as you come towards Adams Street, and then there's another property in the front that's actually owned by Jack Irwin, who's an attorney here in town. And then the lot, there's a house that sort of faces closer to Adams Street at the bottom of that photograph. That is later subdivision of the lot that contains the George dwelling. That's owned by Dr. Pullman. And they actually have access, although they have frontage, their access comes in off of the private drive via another driveway.
What are the existing conditions now? You want to raise an existing structure. What's the existing structure?
Existing structure was one of several dwellings that existed on one large lot. The Forbes estate was built with houses for different members of the family placed in different areas of a very large lot, each sort of surrounded by its own acreage. The George house, for example, is a large mansion-style building that was built in 1902 for Ralph Emerson Forbes, who was the grandson of Ralph Waldo Emerson. And so those houses were built over time. There were other amenities associated with the large estate over time. And as the estate was divided, and pieces were sold, they were divided in such a way that, some of the lots, although large, were left without frontage on public way. There is a paved 40-foot wide private way that comes in. There are easements for the benefit of all property owners for access and egress to and from Adams Street. And so, they could, I suppose, have simply restored the existing dwelling, but they have young children and they want to build a new dwelling to today's standards that meets the needs of their growing family.
Fairly substantial plans. Should the board grant a special permit, and I'm being a little ahead of the game here, but I might as well ask the question. Are these plans sufficiently advanced that if the board based its decision on these plans, as we usually like to do, in substantial conformity? So are these plans well along? Is this what it's going to look like?
Yes.
Anything else?
Just one question, point of clarification. So, your understanding that this is a valid, pre-existing, non-conforming property is not because it was divided prior to the adoption of bylaw, but presumably this provision requiring frontage wasn't in place in 1980? Is that?
I don't know the answer to that. It's not, I note that it is a property line plan and not an approval not required
Agreed.
plan. Because for an A&R plan, you would need frontage. It doesn't have frontage. They simply divided the property into a massive property into smaller lots, each large compared to what's required in the zoning. But it does not have legal frontage on a public way.
But the lot itself, at the time that it was formed, had the okay at that point with the house that was on it. Yeah.
That's the question, I guess.
Okay. Any other questions?
And you indicated the property as contemplated will comply with all dimensional bylaw requirements, right?
I think Mr. Prondak made that finding in his denial letter.
Okay. No further questions.
Is there anybody here this evening that would like to speak in favor of the project? And we'll note that there is nobody. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak or has some questions perhaps of the applicant about the plans, or would like to speak against the project? Thundering silence, which is always a good thing. Well, let's deliberate on this, then we'll close the evidentiary hearing and we'll deliberate on this right now. And Manny.
Thank you, Mr. Corcoran, for a very nice presentation. I short and quick to the point. I'd be inclined to vote in favor of the application. I do think that it has merit, and I think that, frankly, this is a deficiency that the applicant could never satisfy. The property can't be made to have frontage on a public way. An interesting question here is whether we should even be here. I think as I read the bylaw, it almost imposes a requirement that can't be met. But being as it may, I think that the existing property, as has been demonstrated, is deficient. The proposed property would be a nice addition to the area. The need has been established, and in short, I'd be in favor of granting the request for a special permit.
Frank.
I would agree with my colleague. I'd add one point. That is probably the single best zoning board tie I've ever seen, with the little maps and the streetscapes there. So
It's not Milton, is it?
No, it's the city of Boston.
But be that as it may, I agree with my colleague. This is a unique property in a magisterial setting, and frankly, a straightforward application of the particular bylaw in the present circumstances makes no sense. and the bylaw was not designed to be nonsensical. The special permit process is designed to take care of these situations. I don't see any substantial derogation of any property or of the code itself, so I'd be prepared to vote in favor of granting the relief sought.
Well, I have to say that I agree with my colleagues on this. It would be sad to tear a house down on such a beautiful piece of property and not be able to build anything on that. It would be a very sad thing. The house that's been there has existed happily, safely for the last 100 years or more. It does have a 40-foot wide driveway, which certainly lets vehicles in that need to come in for safety and so forth. So I would be inclined to vote for this as well. So, shall we vote? All in favor in granting the special permit?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Jim, you write it? You can have it or I can write it.
Oh, if you'd like to write it, that's fine.
All right. You're aware of the usual.
Conditions and so on. Are you in any, is there any time sensitivity?
They're gonna get started as soon as they can. They can restart the existing.
Right. But they're not working in the winter, right?
I think they're like
All right. I'm just putting my calendar for the next few, but it'll do.
Are you writing the
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Let the fun begin.
There's just 2 letters, Mary, right? 2 letters, that's it.
An email.
So no more, okay.
There she is.
Oh, there she is, okay.
Mary.
She's here.
Are there any other chairs out there available? Are there any other chairs out there available?
There's some across the way, you think?
Just a
Thank
memorandum,
you.
which I'm partly going to use, but I'm going to try not to be too long, so.
Okay.
Thanks.
Is it okay if the resident is relative
Yep.
here?
Folks, if there are chairs in the room across the way and they're not being used, feel free to wheel them in. Oh, pull these against the wall if you're not. Oh, that's Mary's, actually. She'll kill me if I give her a
Have to make sure
chair.
she's comfortable.
Not that one. Almost gave you a chair away.
Yeah.
Be here for a while.
Go in this chair.
Marianne, are these 2 gentlemen here part of your team?
They are.
Okay.
We don't all, we're all part of the team. We
This
don't
is
all
the, this is the whole team, okay.
Okay.
Well, no, No, be comfortable, be comfortable.
We want you there now.
Yeah.
More the merrier.
Ready?
I am.
Okay, well, we're going to call to order our second hearing of the evening, which is upon the application of Falcone Properties LLC, the applicant, regarding premises at 556 Adams Street, which is located in a commercial district. The applicant proposes to build out and operate a 160-seat restaurant at the premises. The proposal shows 140 interior seats with 20 additional seats in an exterior courtyard. The space was formerly occupied as a movie theater. The proposal includes 21 off-street parking spaces on an adjacent lot, accomplished by the demolition of two-family residences known as 10 and 14 Church Street, as shown on a plan by Peter J. Morris, P.E., dated September 17, 2014, on file with the board. The applicant also intends to replace the existing stage and movie screen for incidental and community entertainment purposes. The building at 556 Adams Street is pre-existing non-conforming, as it does not comply with current setback requirements at the left side, which require either less than 6 feet where either a where less than 6 feet exists, where either a minimum of 6 feet or exactly 0 feet are required. The applicant needs the following relief to accomplish the proposed project. Section 4A, non-conforming uses of building and land of the Milton zoning bylaw, requires that alterations to valid pre-existing non-conforming uses and structures occur only after the issuance of a special permit by the Milton Zoning Board of Appeals. Secondly, this section, I believe this is 8C5, parking regulations of the Milton zoning bylaw require that the Zoning Board of Appeals make a finding that sufficient parking is being provided for this proposed use, a restaurant in a business zoning district. And third, section, again, 8D1B, site plan approval, requires that any alteration of a commercial space, which includes exterior alterations, first receive approval from the Milton Planning Board in the form of an endorsed site plan. All is therein set forth in said application and plans on file with the board and open to public inspection. My name is Virginia King, and I'm the acting chairman for tonight's hearing. With me are board members Francis O'Brien and Emmanuel Alves. We will constitute the board tonight. We're familiar with the premises. In addition, the file also contains an application for the special permit. It includes a letter, a 2-page letter that I think I will read into the record. It's from the applicant's attorney, Marion McKettrick, dated October 15th, 2014, saying, "Dear members of the Board of Appeals, encloses an application for 2 special permits from the Board of Appeals for a reuse and renovation project at 556 Adams Street, Milton, at the old East Milton Theater site. The applicant, Falcone's Properties, LLC, owns the property in 2 abutting lots on Church Street. The owner would like to develop the property as a restaurant use with a maximum seating capacity of 160. This use will require a special permit from the Board of Appeals under Section 7G5 of the zoning bylaw, a determination that adequate parking has been provided for the use. In addition, because the existing building has a lot line clearance nonconformity on one side, and the building was constructed prior to the adoption of the zoning bylaw in 1938, the reconstruction project will require an additional permit from the Board of Appeals under Section 4A of the zoning bylaw. After appearing before the Board of Appeals, the applicant will also have to have a hearing before the Planning Board for site plan approval. The property at 556 Adams Street includes several storefront businesses which will remain. The applicant already has a building permit to complete improvements to the part of the building housing these small businesses. Sidewalk improvements, improving safety as well as appearance, are being completed as part of the storefront renovation. The restaurant use will be on one level, and new windows and doors will be added to the sides of the existing brick structure in order to create light and improve the appearance. A small landscape seating area outside the side of the restaurant closer to Franklin Street is proposed for use in warm weather. The seating there, combined with the indoor seating, will be for a maximum of 160 seats. The interior will be fully renovated, and the roof will be replaced within the existing footprint. We will provide architectural plans for the design of the restaurant showing the location of the seating. There will be a front door on Adams Street and a side door that will be handicapped accessible on the Church Street side. Kitchen facilities will be at the back of the building, and storage will be at the basement level. New bathroom facilities will be created near the restaurant entrance. Parking will be provided by creating a new parking lot on Church Street with 23 parking spaces on 2 small lots that are in the business district. The existing houses will be removed. The parking lot will be designed as required for a parking lot in a business district. Valet parking will be provided to maximize efficient use of the spaces. There will be an area in the parking lot near the building for storage of refuse, which will be shielded from view. In addition to this parking lot, the parking lot for the Falcone building on Franklin Street will be made available to the restaurant. Site plans have been provided with this application. This renovation and reuse project will add additional business vitality to East Milton Square and will improve the appearance of the existing building, which has been empty for many years. In addition, the new restaurant will provide additional revenue to the town through an increase in property tax value as well as through additional meal tax revenue. A home rule petition approved last May at the town meeting has been approved by the legislature and signed by the governor for a liquor license to be available at this location. The applicants intend to apply to the Board of Selectmen for a liquor license for the restaurant. I look forward to meeting with the Board of Appeals, and it's signed Marion B. McKettrick. Also, we have a denial letter from our building inspector, Mr. Prondak, citing the things that we've talked about that a special permit is needed for. We have several pages of plans. One is showing the layout of the proposed restaurant, where the seating is, where the small businesses in the front are, and the outside seating area. These are dated September 17th, 2014. We have a proposed site plan of the site of the building as well as the parking lot to the side of the building. And another plan of what is currently there, including the houses that have not been touched yet. And I think this is the same thing. Yes, it is. Yes, okay. I think that ends my preamble, and so I will invite Mrs. McKettrick to speak.
Well, thank you very much for having us here this evening. I want to introduce myself. I'm Marion McKettrick. I'm the attorney representing the applicants this evening. We have members of the Falcone family here tonight, and we also have some consultants who are helping with the project. I just want to introduce them. Bob Falcone, sitting right across the table from me, Jeannie Falcone Schmidt, who's on my left, Deborah Aylward, and Diane Falcone Ratty. Is that the right pronunciation of your name? Ratty, okay. We have Greg Morris, who's an engineer from Morris Engineering. We have Steve Tedisco, who is a restaurant designer, sitting right up here with us, and Michael Santos, who is a consulting engineer for Howard Stein Hudson.
And if I could just interrupt at this moment, I'm not going to remember all of your names. So when you do speak, please remind me of your name. Speak up nice and loud. If you could give us your name and address. And this goes for anybody that would like to speak later as well. Name and address so that we have that for the record. Thank you.
So thank you very much, and thank you for reading my letter, because that means I don't have to reread everything that's in my memo to you. So we understand the general proposition here is that there is vacant, unused property in East Milton, the old East Milton Theater, and the Falcones are proposing to take that vacant space and to convert it into restaurant space. They're going to use the same footprint, the same walls, so from an exterior viewpoint, the building isn't going to look that different, except that there will be some windows added on large ones on one side, small ones on the side facing Church Street. The interior of the restaurant will be improved with all the things that you normally improve the interior of the restaurant. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that right now, but I did want to explain that the Falcone family, all of the Falcones have been lifelong residents of Milton, generations of them. In fact, Bob Falcone tells me that he was the 10th person born at Milton Hospital. So he's one of the originals. And then, you know, the family not only has lived in the town, They've owned a business in the East Milton Square area for more than 30 years, and that's the Falcone office building. When they purchased that property, it was Joseph Falcone, the father. He not only improved the building hugely, I guess it was in very bad shape when he bought it, the Falcones built a larger parking lot, which is still there. So I think they're one of the few businesses in East Milton that has provided its own parking or parking for, or who have created parking when they created the business use. And they want to follow the same model with their restaurant proposal. They want to create additional parking in order to serve the restaurant, and they will also be using their existing parking lot as parking for the restaurant. Falcone LLC now has a letter of intent for a lease of the proposed restaurant space to Vance Welch of Abbey Park. This is a letter of intent, so that means it's still under negotiation, but that is what is being discussed. The plans are for the two restaurants to be managed together in the sense that each will provide complimentary cuisine. And it's expected, or the thought is now that the new restaurant will be likely to offer a traditional Italian cuisine with some, special flair and in a family-friendly atmosphere. It will be what you call a high-end restaurant, but not an inaccessibly high-end restaurant. So the purpose is to create a restaurant that Milton residents will really enjoy going to, and especially residents who live in East Milton who would be able to walk to it to a certain extent. Milton zoning requires that a restaurant use in a business district receive a special permit, determining that there are sufficient parking spaces as the Board of Appeals may deem adequate under the circumstances to meet the parking needs of the restaurant. There are 3 existing larger restaurants in Milton, 2 of which have received permits from the Board of Appeals, Abbey Park in East Milton Square and Steele and Rye on Elliott Street, and one of which, 88 Wharf Street, has received a special permit from the Planning Board. In each of these applications, the Board of Appeals and the Planning Board took into consideration the number of off-street parking spaces to be provided as well as existing available parking in the area, and applied a general standard of 1 available parking space for every 4 seats in the restaurant. There is no rule, there is no standard in the zoning bylaw. Your decision is a matter of discretion, but that is the standard that has been applied in previous cases. And according to the decisions that were written for these applications, there was testimony by the Director of Planning that he and the Planning Board typically utilize an adequacy test of 1 space for every 4 persons for restaurant use. The Planning Board used the same standard for 88 Wharf Street in their permit. The Planning Board has also issued a special permit which has not been used to date, but for a development at 2 Adams Street, which included a restaurant, and in that permit they applied the standard ratio of 4:1 for restaurant seating, for parking. This restaurant proposal is going to be the 2nd large restaurant proposed for East Milton. And because of that, and also because there is a very substantial concern about parking in the East Milton area, we've been studying it for years now in the town, and we hope to eventually create some additional parking. The applicants are proposing to create a new parking lot, which will accommodate 23 cars, as well as using their own parking lot on Franklin Street, which holds 38 cars, as parking for the restaurant. This creates a ratio of 2.5 to 1. For the proposed restaurant seating of 160, which would only be in the summer, when the norm is 4:1. So we are proposing more parking than you have required for other restaurant applications. There haven't been many, and we think East Milton Square is congested enough that it's important to provide additional parking, and that's what we're proposing. In the general standard that the Board of Appeals will apply for granting a special permit is simply that the desired relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially derogating from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. We want to report that we did hold a neighborhood meeting on Friday night. It was at the Art Center in East Milton. It was very well attended, and there were a lot of comments. and questions related in part to the facade renovations that are going on right now. We tried to answer those. But much of the discussion was about traffic concerns in residential neighborhoods around the square. And some of those are concerns which I'll highlight a little bit later, but there were things like speeding on Church Street. There was mention made of the fact that residents feel that commercial customers are parking in front of their residential homes in the residential district. And I think what we want to say about that tonight is we support every possible effort to address speeding on Church Street and other parking and speeding concerns in East Milton Square. We think it might be possible for the town to consider a system of resident permit parking near the commercial district. I don't know if it's ever been discussed, and I don't know if residents will want it or will want to do it. But in other communities, that is one of the things that's done near a commercial district to protect residential properties so that they don't have people parking who are shopping or who are going to a restaurant. And it's a relatively simple system to implement. As far as I understand, anyone who's in the designated area can get parking permits for their cars. They go right on the car. It's a sticker. You post the areas around those residential neighborhoods, and it's very easy to enforce because the police can drive through, and if they see a car parking that isn't stickered, it gets a ticket. It's not a very pleasant experience for the person parking, but it's a good way to deter people from parking in those areas. So, we don't have the power to do that, but we can say that as applicants for this use, we think that it might be a solution that should be looked at. It's not a matter for the Board of Appeals either, but I wanted to mention it because there was real concern, and I've heard that concern expressed for years. So there's possibly something that could be done to help with that. This restaurant, in addition to the fact that it's likely to be managed jointly with Abbey Park, will be what you described as a high-end restaurant. It's going to use food primarily from local producers. It's not going to be a chain restaurant. It's not going to be a sports bar. I think that the renovation that's underway now, which is a separate building permit for the building facade, is a way, I think, of showing that the Falcones want to invest in the way this property looks. And they thought they would start with the facade to show that. They haven't completed the work, but they're going to be putting in handicapped accessible bathrooms in the barber shop, increasing the seating space there. They are replacing the sidewalk at their expense, the town sidewalk, and they are replacing the 2 trees that the town took down. So I know there's some concern about those trees. They are going to be replaced. The town will probably be telling us, what they want, but it will look very nice when it's done. I think what I'd like to do right now, because I want to talk about parking. Parking is the main focus of the Board of Appeals decision. We have a chart that shows East Milton Square and shows the parking lots. Can we just pull that out?
If anybody is interested in seeing it, please feel free to move up.
Should we turn it? Maybe?
Yeah, you can twist it.
Turn it so the audience can also see. Well, if I get up, you won't be able to hear me, so I'm going to just point to this drawing and show you that you can, and Greg Morris will point this out. What we've done is to highlight the parking lots that are available right now and can be used by this restaurant and also by Abbey Park. Because the concept here is that Abbey Park and this restaurant would work together on managing their parking and better managing the parking than may have perhaps occurred in the past. 2 ways. One is that right now you have a Falcone lot next to the Falcone office building. That's behind Abbey Park. That belongs to the Falcones, and for this application, we are telling you, and it will be the case, that this parking lot will be for the new restaurant. It has been leased in the past by Abbey Park on a month-to-month basis, so a question people have asked is, well, what's going to happen to Abbey Park? Where are they going to park? Abbey Park has the right to park at the Citizens Bank parking lot, which has 26 spaces, and they have They're working on written permission. They have verbal permission and have had it from Santander Bank, which is directly across the street from this new restaurant, to park in their parking lot, which has over 30 spaces. So those spaces together are the same or more than the 40 spaces they're required to have by their original permit for their restaurant. But the interesting thing about the spaces are that the Falcone lot's still closer to Abbey Park. The Santander lot is right across the street from this new restaurant. And then the other two lots, the lot on Church Street, you have to drive around the block to get to from the restaurant if you were going to drop off in front. And the Citizens Bank lot are further away and are really well suited if you're doing valet parking for use as a valet parking lot. We're not sure exactly how the parking configuration will work out, but we just want you to know that we're thinking about a lot of different ways of handling parking with the objective of keeping restaurant patrons in their parking lots and not further burdening spaces in the square or spreading parking out into the residential area. So this application is, we'll be providing 61 parking spaces for a restaurant of most of the year 140 seats and 20 extra in the summer, so 160 full capacity.
Can I ask a question on that point, just for clarification?
Sure.
Was the use of the Franklin Street parking spot a condition of the Abbey Park
It's hard-
permit?
It's a little hard to determine. It's possible Abbey Park may have to come back to the Board of Appeals. It says in their permit, one condition says Abbey Park is required to have 40 off-street parking spaces. It's a separate condition. But there's another condition that talks about 2 locations for their parking. One of them, the Congregational Church, has never been used. They've had to get alternate parking almost immediately because there was a question as to whether you can use church parking in a residential district for a commercial use. And that's still an open question. The church has always been willing to help Milton businesses, but they also want to get along with their neighbors, and they don't know what their zoning situation is, whether they can offer parking. So they never used the church parking lot. They instead had in their, they were able to get a condition in their lease, because their lease is from Citizens Bank, that they would be able to use the Citizens Bank lot. And the use of the Santander lot has come about more recently. They've been generous and, offered to allow the use of those spaces. So I didn't know exactly how to address this because Abbey Park isn't the applicant.
Understood.
But you are the Board of Appeals and you did issue the other permit. So we do recognize that that may be an issue. Vance Welch is here tonight and, he's aware of it and we've discussed it right from the beginning.
If I could just press on that, and there's no reason you should know this, but since you looked at these more recently than we have,
Yeah.
would the use of the Citizens lot be sufficient to cover the number of parking spaces that Abbey Park committed itself to?
Not by itself.
Not by
They need the
itself, okay.
Santander lot too, and that's why they're working on a written commitment from Santander.
Okay.
And right now, they do use the Falcone lot. They have a month-to-month lease. And so they have the Falcone lot right now.
But that will
And
be
That plus
discontinued.
the Citizens Bank is absolutely fine for covering the required number of spaces.
But assuming we go forward with the proposal we have here,
Right.
that will be discontinued, correct?
That's right. So they will need substitute parking. And our view is that all the 2 restaurants, if this proposal goes forward, will need all of the parking that I've just described. It will create a 2.5 to 1 ratio. If you take, Abbey Park actually doesn't have 160 seats. It has 130, I believe, but Vance Welch, if he's here, can correct me on that. So when you add up those seats and the 160 to the number of parking spaces that I just described, and I think it's 118, but don't hold me to it, but I think it's about 118. It comes out to be about 2.5 to 1. So both restaurants would benefit from a better ratio for parking than has been required of any of the restaurant applicants to date, and I think it's appropriate for the site, East Milton Square site. You might ask, in connection with parking, though, what about daytime? Because during the day, these parking lots are used. So, first of all, according to Vance Welch, he isn't full in the daytime. East Milton Square, it really isn't a place where people come to have a business lunch. He has business at lunchtime, but he's not full. So we would anticipate that this restaurant would be the same, that it would not be full. I think the Abbey Park permit has a more limited capacity for lunchtime, so that would be something that you may want to consider. Just to describe to you what the situation will be, the 23-person parking lot, 23-car parking lot will always be available to this restaurant. So at lunchtime, they'll have a parking lot with 23 spaces. They will have 9 spaces legally available in the Falcone lot because the other spaces have to be attributed to the office use. There are approximately 7,000 square feet of office space in the Falcone office building, and you have to provide, according to the current bylaw, every 250 square feet of office space, requires 1 parking space. So that uses up 29 spaces in the Falcone lot. That leaves 9 that could be available for restaurant parking. But I think that the dedicated 23-car parking lot is the standard in terms of what might be available all the time for lunchtime parking. And if you're thinking about restaurant capacity, you want to keep that in mind. You could attribute the other 9 spaces as well. They would be available, but,
So using your proposed ratio of 1 to 4, limited capacity of 4 times 23 will be acceptable to your client?
I think, I don't know, but he's sitting right here, so,
What's that,
this
one-
is for lunchtime capacity, right?
What's that, 132?
We're not that far along, really,
Well,
in
just
terms of
curious.
knowing what the restaurant's going to be like. And I think it's within the board's
Discretion.
ability
Yep.
to decide that based
Great.
on what we're telling you. I don't know what Vance Welch would say about how many people he usually has at lunchtime, but that would be pretty good. Is that okay? You have to come up.
Please, come on up.
To be able to hear you.
Just identify yourself
Vance
And-
Welch.
Speak in the speaker.
loud and clearly.
You should sit here, because they won't be able to hear you. Oh, okay.
Vance Welch. 550 Adams. Regarding our lunch business is probably about a tenth of our revenue by comparison to what we do in the evening. Most of our business happens between 7 and 10 o'clock at night. So I don't know if that answers your question. We normally do about anywhere between 20 and 50 covers, as we call them, during lunchtime. That's a fairly normal day. And that's spread out over a period of between 11 and 2 o'clock.
So the limit on your permit during the daytime is, do you know that off the top of your head?
Well, what we did was we found a secondary parking lot. We agreed with the Board of Appeals back when we were going for the permit was to use the Dolan parking lot. And they agreed we can use that.
So the limit was removed,
Yeah,
so
during the day, we can use that parking lot.
One of the parking permits, one of the Board of Appeals decisions has a limit.
Yeah, I
Maybe
know.
it's Steel and Rye.
That's the one I read.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Thank you, Ms. Welch.
Thank you. And do you have 130 seats, is that right?
130 seats.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I'd like to talk just a bit more about management of parking. Say that we've had quite a bit of discussion about valet parking. There was quite a bit of discussion on Friday night about whether or not people are parking in the restaurant parking lots. So we recognize that using valet parking certainly would put cars in the right lots. We don't know what the plan would be, and we also don't know what the view is of valet parking, whether people might for some reason object to that, the use of valet parking. But we are considering it, and especially if the two restaurants are managed together, it makes sense to have a system for valet parking, at least during peak times, because there's apt to be less driving around looking for spaces, because the people doing valet parking are going to know where there's parking available. They can direct valet parking to the lots that are further away, because we all know that people don't like to park far away. They always try to park as close as possible. And leave the lots that are closest, which would actually be the Falcone lot for Abbey Park and the Santander lot for this restaurant, if they choose to cooperate on their parking facilities, for people to park their own cars. Because there are always some people who don't want to use valet parking. So I don't think you can say, not that we're committed to it anyway, that we're going to use only valet parking, because I don't actually like to give my car to someone to park. So I don't know if many people feel that way, but I think you have to recognize it's a factor. We were asked, I think when we met with the planning board informally 2 weeks ago, what we would do if someone wanted to have a funeral lunch at the restaurant. And we said that, well, we thought about it, and we said we would require the parking be at the funeral home. We're assuming it would be a local funeral home. I think that's sometimes done now, but it makes good sense. Even then, we have 23 spaces in the parking lot, but that's the kind of thing that could overflow and cause some congestion. So what we would say is that we would, if we were to have an event like that at this restaurant, that we would be requesting that the parking be provided by the funeral home. And that, if necessary, people could be brought to the restaurant. Well, and there's one other issue with parking, and that is employee parking. That's addressed in the other two permits. Again, we don't have, our restaurant isn't all designed yet, but we expect that there might be 20 to 25 employees. If they were just to go and park in the restaurant parking lot, that would take a substantial number of spaces. That is not what the plan is. We do have an offer from the Milton Flower Shop to allow the use of their parking spaces, which are limited. I think it's 6 spaces, after they close for employees. The rest of the employees for this restaurant will be required to park in the permit parking that the town manages, for which the business has to pay a fee. And it's frequently said that in East Milton what's happening is a lot of businesses are not having their employees park in these parking spaces. There are a lot of those spaces available, but they're not being used. And so we will commit, or we will even agree to a condition, if the Board of Appeals wants to impose it, that our employees for this restaurant will use this parking. I guess it's called service zone parking. Sorry, it's not permit parking, but service zone parking.
And where is that parking located?
Well, there's a lot along the deck, our favorite place. It tends to be a little bit further out, and I think that's done purposefully, because that's where people are less likely to park, because they don't want to walk. So you have to require that your employees walk a little bit further. It's not that far away. It's easily accessible by employees. We also have had, this isn't really a parking issue, but it does relate to the use of the lots. We've certainly have had questions about what we will do about truck deliveries for this restaurant. And in particular, one question was, well, where's the 10-wheeler truck going to park? And we have several answers to that. One is that this is not the kind of restaurant that's going to be served by 10-wheeler trucks. This is a restaurant that's going to be using local produce, local companies. These places they use small trucks to make their deliveries. And the plan would be to have those truck deliveries be to the Church Street parking lot, off-street, not on-street, and to regulate deliveries to reasonable daytime hours, not rush hour times. We haven't set times, they could be imposed by one of the permitting authorities that has to permit a restaurant. But we want you to know that we're thinking about it. And the 10-wheeler truck issue is kind of interesting. I mean, we said in answer to it, or at least we've decided in talking about it, if we were to get something like soda from a large purveyor, that same person, that same entity, is the same entity that's going to be delivering to Mr. Chan's, and it's going to be delivering to Abbey Park. If a large truck has to come and make a delivery like that, they're not going to pull into each site. They're going to pull in, unfortunately, and this is what they do now, they have to pull over on Adams Street. They get their carts out, and they wheel whatever it is in. Let's say it's soda. So we don't feel there will be any additional large truck traffic because of this restaurant. We don't anticipate there'll be much at all. And if there is, those same trucks are already delivering nearby in the square. There aren't going to be new truck visits as a result of adding this restaurant. And again, I emphasize, we would use non-rush hour daytime hours for deliveries in order to not intrude on people in the square. Apparently, trucks are allowed to deliver during the night to Dunkin' Donuts. They are noisy. Those are large trucks, and we're sympathetic with that, and we have no intention of having deliveries like that, and certainly not along the Church Street side where there are residences. We do have our engineer here, and if you'll be willing to give me the time to have him just show the site plan. This isn't site plan review, but I would think you'd have some interest in what the site plan can show you. So I'm going to ask Greg Morse. Problem here, Greg, is you got to be able to be heard too. So you have to walk over to the table.
Again, for the record, my name is Gregory Morse, Morse Engineering. I'm a registered engineer. I put together the site plans for this property. I'm going to start with a brief overview of what the existing conditions are. The existing property is shown here in bold. It's actually consisting of 3 separate properties. You have the 556, 558 Adams Street property. Adams Street is along the bottom of the plan. You also have number 10 and number 14 Church Street. Church Street is shown on the right side of the
Greg,
plan.
can I stop you for just a second?
Yes.
So, on the, is the plan that you have up there one of the plans that you gave us?
It should be, yep.
Yes, you received a full set.
Which number is it
This
down
is
there?
sheet 2, existing conditions plan.
Okay. Just, when you're going through your presentation, if you wouldn't just note for us which sheet you're looking at.
Sure.
I can't read the plan from here, so I can read the plan from here.
Sorry. Yeah. So sheet 2, again, the existing conditions plan shows in bold the property line. The property line in its entirety for the 3 properties, it's about half an acre, 20,710 square feet. It's all upland area. There are no wetlands. There are no floodplains on this. As Marion said, it's in the business zoning district. The zoning district is just north of the property, cuts through here. The property is abutted by a residential property to the north on Church Street, and then commercial properties to the west, commercial properties to the south. There are residences on Church Street to the east of the property.
Mr. Morse, a question. Does the applicant currently own the entire lot?
Yes.
Yes. The whole site right now is serviced by municipal utilities, water, sewer, electric, limited drainage out here. There are 2 leaching catch basins on the site right here. And I'm going to flip now to...
Actually, before you leave the
Yep.
current premises, so the 2 business enterprises on the front, what are they? 3.
Out front here, there's a barber shop, there's a salon, there's a boutique.
Yep, I'm familiar with it.
Yep.
So where would be the entrance to the proposed restaurant space?
Sure, so the proposed restaurant is going to have an entrance right in the middle of
Oh.
those units, if you look at the facade. And I brought a picture of the proposed facade, if you'd like
All
to
right,
see
fine.
that in a minute. Yeah.
That's fine.
I have one question. We have the boundary of the zoning residence district and the business district to the north, I guess that is. Where is that on the east?
On the east, over here, how far over does it go?
No, the other side.
On Church,
Sorry.
towards Church Street.
To Church Street?
Yeah.
I'm not positive, I didn't extend it out beyond this property line.
Because the real question is, does it extend to the properties on the other side of the street?
No.
The properties on the other side of the street here are these,
Right.
That is a residential zone.
they're,
So the commercial district ends on the east side lot?
Correct.
Okay, of Church Street.
Okay.
flipping to sheet 3, which is the site layout plan. I colored in a plan here on the front, just as a colored rendering. It generally follows and depicts what's on your sheet 3. Okay. What it shows is it shows what the proposal is. The proposal is to demolish the 2 single-family residences that were on Church Street and to rehabilitate the 556 to 558 Adams Street theater building. Okay, so you'll see that those 2 residences are gone. Here's the new theater building. We're utilizing the new land area that we've accumulated by that demolition for construction of the new parking lot. Okay. The property here will still have access out to Adams Street for the smaller units in the front. The main entrance for the restaurant will remain right here in the front on Adams Street. There is a secondary entrance, though, being proposed at this location. That secondary access has a proposed walkway out to the parking area. It also has a walkway along the side of the building and around to the back. The back out here, this is where we are proposing an outdoor seating area, which would have seasonal seating of up to 20 seats.
Now, just for my own edification, so the seating area, if I recall correctly, looking at the, there's a retaining wall in the parking lot, so
Yes.
it would be up, is that a wall and then it's level, or is it down below the wall?
It's a little lower,
It's a little lower.
which we're gonna fill, landscape.
Yeah, the adjacent property to the rear here, which is parking lot area, is lower in elevation than our property. And yes, there is a retaining wall that approximates the boundary.
At the appropriate time, I have a number of questions that I would like to have answered relative to that particular part of the proposal.
Okay.
Happy to do it whenever you want, but, you know.
I want you guys to get through your presentation.
Okay, thank
Sure.
you.
We are proposing a number of landscaping features. What we've proposed is we've proposed along this boundary line here of the parking lot and the abutting residential house, a screen of evergreens along that row. You can see that. And then out back around the outdoor seating area, this would be more ornamental plantings and landscaping beds around the sidewalk, around the side of the building, and around the back side of the outdoor seating area.
Since you mentioned it, the proposed evergreen plantings there, there's also a sloping variation in the grade between where the property that is proposed to be raised currently sits and the residential lot, right? Do they not sit at different?
There's not so much of a change with the residential lot out
There's not.
front. The change is more drastic out back with this commercial lot that has the Starbucks in the parking lot on it.
Understood.
The parking, as outlined in our parking table, it provides for a total of 23 spaces. The parking lot would be a one-way in and a one-way out. Traffic would be circular in motion, in and out. It utilizes primarily the 2 locations of the existing curb cuts that exist from the single-family houses that are out there. The parking spaces are all striped. We have designated handicap access parking here with van accessible route into the restaurant. We are proposing the use of valet parking, and we have proposed here double stacked parking with spaces double stacked along that side there.
Explain that, please. Sorry. Double stacked meaning?
Double stacked meaning you'd park one car behind another car, where the valet would have control of the 2 cars.
Got it.
We do have an enclosed dumpster pad. The dumpster would be enclosed on the sides by fenced structure. It would have a gate across the front of it. It would shield it visibly. It would also prevent animals from getting into it, or trash from escaping, or wind-blown debris from escaping from the dumpster. It's centrally located at the back, which is the closest to where the access is from the kitchen.
Where's the delivery entrance?
Delivery entrance is, again, right here, listed in the back, delivery entrance. This is the kitchen area. We have a general schematic, I think, that we submitted of the restaurant layout, and I'm going to put that up on the board here. The Adams Street is on the left side of the plan here. This white space would be existing tenants out front, the barber shop, the salon. So here's our main entrance into the restaurant. You open up into a large seating area here, bathroom facilities toward the front of the restaurant. That new entrance would be right here to the parking lot. And then at the back side of the restaurant, this is where the kitchen and refrigeration would all be, and storage would all be in the back. And you see the service door here to the side. That would be for deliveries or for access to the dumpsters.
So, Mr. Morse, not to interrupt your presentation, but I have a question for Ms. McKittrick. So, I think a lot of the questions that the folks in the room are going to have on this application that may relate to the raising of the existing single-family homes, the creation of the lot, none of which are before us. And you admit that you need to go before the planning board to get site plan approval. And I looked at the standards that the planning board is required to go through, and I guess I'm curious why we're sequencing these hearings in this way. Should we, would it not have made better sense to start this with the planning board, which is going to talk about sewage, refuse handling, lighting, vehicle and pedestrian traffic, all the issues that are sort of on the periphery of what we're talking about here. So what's the thinking behind coming here first?
I suppose it's like, as we often do, I'm just following the sequencing that's been used for the other applications. The